Solving by completing the square. So, an equation can be solved by completing the square, by completing the square, and then solving it. Amazing. So, first, the easiest thing to do is to get the constant on the other side of the equation so that it is easy to get the square completed. So 14, half of that is 7, and squaring that is 49. If that doesn't make sense to you, go back and watch the completing the square video. Now we'll add 49 to both sides. You could add 49 and subtract 49, but this is easier. So this is x squared plus 14x plus 49 equals 39. Now, this 49 makes this a perfect square. That's why it's completing the square. So this becomes x plus 7 squared equals 39. Now, the opposite of squaring is square rooting. So we will take plus or minus the square root of both sides. So plus or minus the square root of 39. This is the new step. The opposite of squaring is square rooting. And because positive times a positive is positive, negative times a negative is positive, it could be positive or negative the square root of 39. Again, plus or minus square root of 39 is an abbreviation for saying square root of 39 or negative square root of 39. So there's two answers here. Now we subtract 7. These are not like terms, so we'll say negative 7 plus or minus square root of 39. I will accept that as an answer, but just so we're clear, this is the same thing as saying negative 7 plus square root of 39 or negative 7 minus the square root of 39. That's not a question. It's that both of those are correct answers that make this equation true. Another one. Let's get the constant on its own side. T squared minus 3t equals negative 1. Now we can complete the square by taking negative 3, dividing by 2, and squaring it. And that will give us, add 2.25 to both sides. T squared minus 3t plus 2.25 equals 1.25. So far we've completed the square. Now we have to identify the square. T minus 1.5 squared, again that's from here, equals 1.25. Now we take the square root of both sides. This is where it's nicer to write 1.25 as a fraction. 1.25 is the same thing as 125 hundredths, which is the same thing as 5 fourths. So I'm going to replace this with 5 fourths because it's going to be easier to take the square root of that than the square root of 1.25. T minus 1.5 equals, take plus or minus the square root of that. The square root of 5 is square root of 5. The square root of 4 is 2. Now 1.5, let's write that as a fraction as well. Negative 3 halves plus or minus square root of 5 over 2. If you've forgotten your fractions, I've probably lost you at this point, but you need to learn your fractions, so learn them. Add 3 halves to both sides. T equals 3 halves plus or minus square root of 5 halves. So that's an answer. Or you could write it as t equals 3 plus the square root of 5 all over 2. Or 3 minus the square root of 5 all over 2. That's a different way of writing the answer. Last one. So this is set up in the wrong way because 11 needs to be on the right side and 8 needs to be on the left side because 8 has x in it. So I'm going to subtract 8x and subtract 11 from both sides to get things on their proper side. 11 minus 11 is 0. 8x minus 8x is 0. So now things are in order. The other thing is we need to get rid of the 4. The easiest way to get rid of the 4 is to divide both sides by 4, giving 8x squared minus 2x equals negative 11 fourths. Now we take negative 2, cut it in half, getting negative 1, and squaring it, getting positive 1. So let's add positive 1. Add positive 1. So x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals negative 11 fourths plus 1 is negative 11 fourths plus 4 fourths, or negative 7 fourths. Now, this is x minus 1 squared equals negative 7/4. When we square root this, there is no square root of a negative. So what we say is no solution. You cannot take the square root of a negative, in this case, negative 7/4. So that means that this equation is never true. Let me just double check that I did my arithmetic right. I did. There is no solution. That happens sometimes, but sometimes we get perfectly good solutions. You may not like that this solution is not pretty, but that's why we have completing the square. If these solutions were pretty, we would just solve by factoring in most cases. Completing the square is good for these problems where the answers are not pretty, or it verifies that there is no solution. Thank you.